Welcome. Take your place beside the quiet glow of the fire and let the hush of night settle softly around you. Here, the burdens of the day slip away with the gentle crackle of embers. In this circle of warmth, we wander beyond memory's edge, where old stories still whisper and ancient truths drift like shadows across the soul. Tonight, our tale begins in the world's first dawn, a time when gods shaped the fates of mortals, and curiosity itself became a path both bright and perilous. Among their creations was Pandora, a woman whose beauty was matched only by the mystery placed in her hands, a box sealed tight, its contents hidden even from the gods. Let your mind drift with us as we follow the gentle unfolding of her story, seeking the lessons tucked within the hush of forbidden things, and the fragile light that endures when all else is swept away. Here, in the shelter of quiet, we listen not for thunder or wrath, but for the soft wisdom that waits in the shadows, patient as hope. Long before sorrow had learned to haunt the hearts of mortals, the earth stretched wide and gentle beneath the endless sky. Dawn spilled quietly across rolling meadows, and rivers wandered their winding paths between groves of olive and wildflowers. Each day, the world was a tapestry woven from soft light and peace. There was no hunger, no grief, no shadow, but that cast by trees in the afternoon sun. High above, on cloud-wreathed Olympus, the gods watched over their creation with a mixture of pride and restlessness. Immortals shaped the mountains, scattered the stars, and called forth forests from bare stone. Their laughter was the thunder, their footsteps sent breezes rippling through fields of grain. Humans lived below in a golden age of innocence, knowing only comfort and gentle routine. Their lives moved in time with sun and moon, with no fear of loss or longing, and no memory of pain. Yet even in such a paradise, seeds of unease began to stir among the gods. Some, like wise Athena or gentle Demeter, were content to see mortals flourish in peace. Others watched with narrowed eyes, sensing the faintest whiff of danger in happiness untested. Was it truly wise to leave humankind in perpetual bliss, untouched by the challenges that shaped the immortal heart? On Olympus, questions bloomed in secret, and old rivalries whispered behind gilded doors. It was Zeus, king of gods and keeper of storms, who first voiced what others only dared to ponder. We have granted these children of earth every grace, every comfort, he mused. But the world grows stagnant in such peace. Without struggle, without choices, how can mortals truly know themselves? Perhaps it is time for them to meet their own destiny. Time for a gift that is also a test. And so, high in the halls of Olympus, a plan began to form. Not a punishment, but a challenge. A vessel to contain both beauty and burden, hope and hardship. From this design would come a story the world had never seen. One that would begin with a single woman and a mysterious box. The fate of all humankind quietly balanced beneath its shining lid. As the gods looked down on the sleeping world, the first faint ripple of change stirred the wind. Somewhere in the hush before morning, destiny drew a gentle breath, and the peace of ages waited, trembling, for the touch of curiosity that would set it forever in motion. In the shimmering heights of Olympus, the gods gathered beneath marble columns and veils of bright cloud, their voices weaving a tapestry of purpose and pride. It was here that Zeus revealed his plan, a creation that would change the course of mortals forever. He summoned Hephaestus, the divine smith, whose hands could coax wonders from stone and fire, to forge a vessel unlike any other. Day and night, Hephaestus worked at his blazing forge, shaping clay and gold into a box both beautiful and forbidding. Its surface gleamed with delicate patterns, swirling vines, silent birds, strange beasts curled in sleep. Upon its lid, the god inscribed symbols known only to the immortals, marks of protection and mystery, as if the box itself breathed in secrets. But Hephaestus was not alone. The gods and goddesses each bestowed their own gifts, slipping intangible threads into the vessel's heart. Athena granted wisdom and the patient urge to seek knowledge. Aphrodite offered the shimmer of longing and the ache of love. Apollo sang hope into the box, a soft, persistent light that would never truly fade. Yet others, unnoticed, let shadows slide beneath the golden surface. Envy, grief, hunger, all the unnamed sorrows that haunt the world's edges. By the time Hephaestus stepped back from his creation, the box was perfect, radiant, inscrutable, and heavy with hidden meaning. Its lock was seamless, its hinges silent. It was a thing of beauty, but also of warning, and it pulsed with an invitation that no mortal heart could ignore. Now the gods needed one who would bear the gift. Zeus called upon all Olympus to craft a new being, one who could walk among mortals and awaken destiny with a single choice. With earth and breath and 100 secret blessings, they shaped Pandora, the first woman of her kind. Aphrodite gave her grace. Athena taught her skill. Hermes set a spark of curiosity behind her gentle eyes. When Pandora stood at last before them, radiant as the first dawn, the gods marveled at their creation. She was both wonder and question, beauty and longing, innocence and hidden strength. Into her arms they placed the box, its surface cool and luminous in her hands. She felt its weight and the hum of all that slumbered within, not knowing that the path of all humankind now rested quietly in her keeping. Guided by the messenger god Hermes, Pandora descended from the bright heights of Olympus to the gentle slopes of the mortal world. Her first steps on earth were like the fall of soft rain, subtle, yet soon felt everywhere. The people who saw her sensed something unfamiliar and wonderful. Her eyes carried the shimmer of dawn, and her voice, when she spoke, seemed to hold a secret hope. She moved among the fields and quiet villages, learning the ways of humankind. She watched children chase each other through wildflowers and elders tell stories by the fire, listened to the laughter that floated on the breeze, and felt the comfort of hands folded in peaceful work. In every gesture, every smile, Pandora discovered the fragile golden threads that tied mortal lives together. Yet wherever she went, the box was never far from her side. Wrapped in the soft cloth or cradled gently in her lap, it became a silent companion, one that drew lingering glances from those around her. The villagers asked nothing, but their eyes would sometimes linger on the vessel with a kind of silent awe, as if they sensed that it belonged to a world not entirely their own. For Pandora, the box was both comfort and enigma. Its beauty fascinated her, and she found herself tracing the delicate patterns with her fingertips, wondering at the secrets hidden beneath its shining lid. At night, in the hush before sleep, she would lie awake beside it, feeling the gentle thrum of possibilities just beyond her reach. She remembered Hermes' parting words. "This is a gift, Pandora. Guard it well. Do not open it lightly, for what is sealed inside belongs to fate itself." His warning echoed softly in her heart, but so too did an ancient and gentle urge, the curiosity that stirs at the root of all living things. So life continued, golden and peaceful, but now threaded with a single question. Pandora lived among mortals, her kindness drawing them near, but always, in the quiet moments, her gaze drifted to the box. It waited, silent and beautiful, its promise as irresistible as the first blush of dawn. As the days passed, Pandora found herself settling into the gentle rhythms of mortal life. She gathered wild herbs with the women by the riverside, shared in the quiet joy of woven baskets and warm bread, and listened as songs and laughter drifted beneath the open sky. Among the people, she felt a kind of belonging, soft and new, like spring grass beneath bare feet. But when dusk crept in and shadows lengthened across the earth, her attention would always return to the box. Sometimes, in the hush of night, she would reach out and rest her hand lightly on its smooth, shining surface, feeling a faint vibration, as if the vessel itself remembered her touch. The patterns carved into the lid seemed to shimmer in the moonlight, and more than once she thought she heard the softest sigh, the gentlest whisper, coming from within. Pandora tried to heed Hermes' warning, to treat the box with reverence and patience, yet inside her heart, curiosity stirred. It was a quiet, persistent ache, a sense that something waited for her, something the gods themselves had hidden not just as a test, but as an invitation. Why bestow a gift and forbid it? Why trust her with such beauty, only to shroud it in secrecy? By day, Pandora smiled and worked, but by night she wrestled with the longing to know. Was it hope inside the box, or sorrow, or something neither word could name? Each night the question grew larger, settling beside her like a silent companion. Sometimes her dreams were filled with images of radiant light bursting from beneath the lid, of gentle winds whispering secrets across endless fields. She spoke to no one of the struggle within her. The villagers saw only her grace and kindness. But when she thought herself alone, Pandora would sit with the box cradled in her lap, tracing its golden lines, and wondering how a heart so full of goodness could also carry such longing. So the days drifted on, and the whisper of curiosity deepened, soft at first, then swelling like a tide that can neither be ignored nor stilled. And always, just beyond the reach of understanding, the box waited, luminous and silent, for the moment when Pandora's hand would tremble at its lid. One evening, as the world settled into the hush of twilight and the last golden light faded from the fields, Pandora sat alone by her small window. The village was quiet, children long since called indoors, fires glowing low behind thick wooden doors. On her table, the box seemed to glow faintly in the shadows, its patterns reflecting the soft silver of the rising moon. Pandora rested her hands upon the lid, feeling again that subtle pulse, as if the vessel itself held a living heart. The old warning echoed in her memory, do not open it lightly, but her mind whirled with gentle questions that refused to fade. What harm could truly lie inside such a beautiful thing gifted by the gods? Was there not wisdom in discovery, courage in seeking what was hidden? Why give a gift so lovely only to command that it remain forever closed? The box called to her more strongly than ever, a silent invitation that tugged at her heart with both promise and warning. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply, trying to silence the ache within. But it was no use. Curiosity had taken root, blooming quietly beneath her ribs, patient and inexorable as the turning of the seasons. She lifted the box into her lap, tracing its golden lines, searching for answers in the shifting shimmer of moonlight. The air felt thick and heavy, as if the whole night was waiting for her decision. All around her the world held its breath. Pandora's hand hovered above the lid. For a long moment, she hesitated, remembering the kindness of the people, the gentleness of the world, the warmth that filled her days. But even this could not quiet the longing to know, the deep, yearning hope that knowledge would bring understanding, and that understanding would bring peace. And so, in the tender hush before midnight, Pandora made her choice. The moment her fingers curled around the edge of the lid, something shifted, a subtle current in the air, a quiet thrill that ran through her soul. In that instant, the fate of mortals and gods alike began to change. as softly and surely as the moon rises above the sleeping earth. Pandora's heart beat quietly in the darkness, the world outside wrapped in the hush of midnight. With trembling hands, she pressed her fingers to the lid and slowly, carefully, lifted it from its resting place. For an instant, nothing happened. Only the cool breath of night and the low song of crickets beyond her window. Then, with a sound like the faintest sigh, a thin ribbon of shadow curled from the box. It shimmered with iridescent colours, swirling in the air, and was followed by another and another, each wisp more vibrant, more restless than the last. The box grew warm in her hands, and before Pandora could draw breath or close the lid, the room filled with a sudden silent storm. Out poured things never known to mortals: sorrow and fear, jealousy, hunger, sickness, longing, and regret. Like a flock of dark-winged birds, they spun around Pandora and fled into the night, slipping through cracks in the walls, racing over rooftops, streaming into dreams. Wherever they touched, a hush settled, a shadow pressed gently onto the sleeping world. Pandora stared in wonder and fear, unable to move, as each shadow vanished into the darkness. She tried to call them back, to gather them with gentle hands, but they slipped away, invisible and unbound, out into the heart of humanity. The air felt changed now, full of distant aches and quiet sighs, a music both sorrowful and strangely sweet. Suddenly, from the depths of the box, a single soft glow remained. Unlike the others, it did not rush away, but hovered in the still air, shining with a gentle golden light. Pandora, with tears in her eyes, reached for it, not with fear, but with the quiet longing that rises after sorrow has passed. And as her hand closed around the last light, she realized that what remained was hope. Small, persistent, and unbreakable. She placed the lid back upon the box, cradling it in her lap as if to comfort it. Through the open window, the breeze carried a new song, one woven of both sorrow and longing, but also of courage and quiet dreams. In the night that followed, Pandora sat in silence, holding hope in her hands, and waited for dawn. When at last the horizon grew pale and the first gentle rays of sunlight crept across the village rooftops, Pandora was still awake. She watched the colours of morning rise, chasing the shadows from the fields and filling the world with the soft promise of a new day. But the hush that greeted the dawn was different now, deeper, touched by something unspoken. As the village stirred to life, Pandora stepped out beneath the olive trees, hope still glowing quietly in her hands. The air was heavy with silence. She saw the change in the faces of those around her. There were lines of worry in their brows, and behind every smile flickered a shadow of doubt or longing that had never been there before. Children clung a little more closely to their mothers. Friends spoke in softer tones. The golden thread of innocence that once tied every heart had been gently frayed. Yet, even in the stillness, there was not only sadness. Some greeted the morning with gentle courage, moving through the new uncertainty with hands held tighter, voices kinder. People comforted one another in small, unseen ways. Songs were sung quietly, not to chase away sorrow, but to share it, and to remind each other that the world still offered warmth and beauty alongside the ache. Pandora watched all this and felt the weight of her choice. She wished, for a moment, that she could gather the scattered shadows and tuck them back inside the box. But she knew now that the world had changed, grown deeper, richer, and more real. And as she looked at the hope glowing gently in her hands, she understood the gift that remained. For even in the face of sorrow and struggle, hope persisted. It fluttered in the hearts of children, bloomed in the songs sung at dusk, and lingered in the soft glances exchanged by friends at the end of a long day. Hope was a small, shining promise that whatever darkness might come, the light would always return. And so, beneath the soft light of the first new dawn, Pandora walked quietly among her people, ready to share the hope she had found, one gentle word, one quiet moment at a time. The days after the opening of the box settled over the village like a new season, slow and strange. At first, sorrow clung heavily to every home. People awoke with the memory of dreams that ached, and an uncertainty crept into their voices. Friends hesitated before greeting one another, searching faces for comfort or forgiveness. Tears, once rare and startling, now shimmered quietly in the eyes of old and young alike. Yet life did not stop. In the hush left behind by the fleeing shadows, something gentle began to grow. Where sadness lingered, hands found each other more readily. Mothers sang softer lullabies, their voices trembling but true. Children, sensing the changes, huddled closer together and shared their fears in whispers, learning that to be afraid was not to be alone. Pandora watched all this unfold with a heart heavier than before, yet strangely awake. She moved through the village each day, her presence a silent promise that hope endured. Sometimes she sat beside those who wept, not speaking, simply offering a listening ear or a steady hand. In the quiet moments, when dusk painted the sky in gold and violet, she would open her palm to let the gentle glow of hope shine out, a reminder that even in the deepest shadow, light could still be found. The elders began to gather the people in the evenings, lighting small fires that flickered in the cooling air. Around these flames, stories changed. Once, they had told only of golden days and God's easy blessings. Now, their tales carried lessons about perseverance, kindness, and the value of forgiveness. They spoke gently of sorrow as a visitor, not a curse, one who, though often unwelcome, could teach hearts to open more widely, to reach for others with understanding. Slowly, the village discovered new forms of strength. People built rituals of comfort, baking extra bread to share with a grieving neighbor, weaving new cloth together to mend what had been torn, singing together at dawn to welcome the light. Laughter returned, quieter but more precious than before. When joy appeared, it was met with gratitude, a sense that it must be cherished. For now, all understood how fleeting it could be. Pandora herself was changed too. The regret she carried softened as she witnessed the resilience blooming around her. She learned that sorrow could deepen the well of the heart, making more room for hope. She cherished every gentle smile, every act of grace, and found that hope was not just a glow in her hands, but a seed planted in every soul willing to care for it. So as the days lengthened and seasons turned, the echoes of sorrow moved side by side with hope. The world grew deeper, more tender, and mortals learned to walk in the delicate balance between shadow and light, weaving a new story from the gifts and trials that Pandora's choice had brought. As the village continued to change, Pandora's own journey became one of quiet atonement and gentle courage. Though no one blamed her openly for the sorrow that had entered their lives, Pandora carried her regret like a stone inside her chest. She remembered the innocence of her arrival, the lightness of days before the box had been opened, and wondered if she would ever feel such peace again. Yet in the weeks that followed, she chose not to hide from the world or from herself. Instead, Pandora moved among her people with new humility. She helped tend the sick when the first fevers swept through, sat with mothers who grieved, and listened to the stories of the old, who spoke softly of loss, but also of the small joys that still remained. She did not try to erase sorrow. Instead, she tried to lighten its weight, if only by sharing it. Pandora often visited the fields at dawn, walking where the olive trees met the wildflowers, hope still glowing quietly in her hand. In these early hours, she learned to forgive herself, just a little. She began to see how her choice, though it brought pain, had also made possible a new kind of beauty. The strength that grew from comforting a friend, the wisdom that came from enduring hardship, the simple, golden moments that shone brighter for their contrast with shadow. The villagers, too, saw the change in Pandora. They welcomed her gently into their homes and circles. Children, once shy, now sought her out, sitting at her feet to listen to her voice or to touch the soft glow of hope she carried. Elders invited her to join in their rituals, weaving her into the fabric of their lives as both a reminder of sorrow and a bearer of new light. One evening, as the sun set in deep amber behind the hills, Pandora stood before the gathered village. She spoke softly, her words threading through the hush. "I cannot undo what has passed, nor shield you from every sorrow, but I will remain with you to share what burdens I can, and to keep hope alive among us." Her voice trembled, but in the eyes of those listening there was no anger, only understanding and quiet acceptance. That night, as stars brightened the sky, Pandora sat alone with the box and the little glow of hope. She no longer saw it as a punishment, but as a task, a calling to hold fast to light, even when darkness pressed close. In that realization, her heart grew lighter, and the world felt a little more whole. As weeks turned to months, hope slowly began to root itself in the lives of the villagers. What had once felt like a fragile ember in Pandora's hands became a quiet force threading through every household and field. It was not a return to the old innocence, those days were gone, but something new, deeper and more enduring. Neighbors who had once lived only for ease and laughter now understood the weight of tears and the gift of comfort. They reached for one another more freely, sharing burdens with less shame. Sorrow no longer scattered them. It drew them closer, binding the community in bonds that were tested and strengthened with every hardship faced. Pandora found herself transformed by these changes. Each act of care, binding a wound, listening to a story, offering a meal, felt like a small healing for her own heart. She watched as children who once played without worry learned to console each other after a fall, or to invite a lonely friend into their games. Even the old men, who had rarely wept, now spoke more openly of the losses and hopes that shaped their lives. At the village gatherings, songs took on new meaning. People sang not just for joy, but to comfort and inspire, weaving together voices that trembled with both sorrow and resilience. There were moments of silence in the music too, where everyone paused to remember those who had been lost or to let tears fall without embarrassment. It was in these spaces, between joy and grief, that hope glowed brightest. Pandora remained a steady presence at the heart of it all. Though she still mourned the opening of the box, she grew to accept that not all wounds could be undone. Her regret was tempered by gratitude for the strength she witnessed every day, for the courage that allowed hope to blossom anew. She realized that her greatest gift was not in preventing sorrow, but in reminding others and herself that it was possible to endure, to find light, and to continue loving even when the world felt broken. One evening, as she sat beneath an ancient olive tree, a group of children gathered around her. They asked her to tell them about hope, about the light she carried and why it never faded. Pandora smiled, holding the glow in her hands, and spoke softly. Hope lives wherever we choose to care for one another. It grows stronger each time we share it. Even in our darkest moments, it waits for us, patient as the dawn. As the last light faded and stars filled the sky, Pandora knew that hope was no longer hers alone. It belonged now to everyone who had learned to cherish it, and in that knowledge, the world felt both changed and healed. The world beyond the village too felt the ripples of Pandora's choice. Sorrow and hope became companions, not just among her people, but wherever mortals dwelled. Tales spread of the strange woman who brought both trouble and comfort, stories that carried on the wind, woven into travelers' songs and whispered by distant hearths. With the turning of the seasons, Pandora saw how life itself had changed. The fields bloomed in spring, but now the planting was sometimes followed by storms that battered young shoots. Summer's warmth still brought joy, but also droughts that demanded patience and ingenuity. Autumn's harvests were shared with gratitude, yet the cold of winter reminded all of the need for compassion and the kindness of neighbors. Pandora learned alongside the villagers. She discovered the rhythms of sorrow, how it ebbed and flowed, never staying forever, but always returning in some new shape. She found that grief, though sharp, softened with time when shared, and that joy, though quieter, could shine more purely in its wake. Hope, meanwhile, became less a flicker in Pandora's palm and more a shared light that travelled from hand to hand. When someone stumbled beneath the weight of loss, others reached out, drawing them back into the circle of warmth and care. Children learned the names of both pain and resilience, and elders spoke with new humility, admitting their own fears while reminding others that no night lasted forever. There were still moments when Pandora sat alone with the box. Sometimes she wept for what had been unleashed, her regrets echoing in the empty spaces of her heart. But more and more, she found comfort in the sounds of village life. The laughter drifting on evening breezes, the gentle hush that fell when a story was told, the steady drum of footsteps as people moved forward, together. Through it all, Pandora grew, her heart deepening, her understanding widening. She came to see her journey not as a path of shame, but as a story of transformation. The box, once a symbol of regret, became a quiet teacher, a reminder that sorrow could give birth to tenderness, that hope could survive any trial, and that forgiveness was the truest gift of all. As a new year dawned and the world turned once more, Pandora stood with her people beneath a sky of bright stars. She felt both sorrow and hope alive in her chest, and understood at last that these were not enemies, but necessary companions, threads woven together into the endless tapestry of human life. Time, that quiet sculptor, worked gently on the wounds left by the opening of the box. With each passing year, the village learned new ways to grow around its sorrow, weaving it into the patterns of daily life. There were still days when grief rose up, an unexpected loss, a harsh winter, the ache of loneliness. But these moments no longer felt endless or insurmountable. Pandora watched as her people became more attentive to one another's needs. Where before small hurts might have been ignored, now neighbors noticed and responded. A loaf of bread left on a doorstep, a kind word in the marketplace, laughter shared over simple meals. Compassion became a habit, tenderness a quiet strength. Even the children, once careless in their happiness, grew thoughtful and gentle in their play, quick to comfort a friend or invite someone left out into their circle. Hope, once so fragile, now pulsed through the village like a gentle current. It shone in the way people rose after disappointment, how they planted new seeds even after crops failed, how they sang in the evenings not to deny sorrow, but to hold it close and give it voice. Hope and sorrow lived side by side, and in their balance the people found a resilience deeper than they had ever known. Pandora herself grew wise with the seasons. She learned to listen for unspoken hurts and to speak words that soothed, not out of duty, but from true care. Her presence, once marked by guilt, became a source of comfort, a reminder that even the greatest mistakes could be redeemed through kindness and patience. She was welcomed into every home, and at every table, people would say, "There is always hope, so long as we are together." Sometimes, On quiet nights, Pandora would still sit with the box in her lap. She traced its patterns, not with fear, but with gratitude, for the lessons it had brought, for the light it helped her see in the darkest hours. She understood now that suffering could not be erased from the world, but it could be transformed, made bearable, even beautiful, when shared. As years melted into each other and children grew to tell the story of Pandora themselves, the memory of the box became less a warning and more a guide. To live bravely, to care deeply, and to trust that hope, once released, could never truly be lost. With the passage of time, Pandora's story became the village's story, a lesson quietly woven into the way people lived, loved, and remembered. As new generations were born, children grew up hearing tales of the mysterious box and the woman who brought both hardship and hope. But the bitterness of regret faded. What remained was the wisdom left in the wake of sorrow. Around evening fires, elders spoke of Pandora not as a villain, but as a symbol of what it means to be human, to make mistakes, to feel longing, and to choose again and again to turn toward the light. Children listened with wide eyes, comforted by the idea that even in the worst of times, hope would linger, patient and strong. The villagers developed rituals to honor this balance. In spring, they planted gardens together, blessing each seed with a wish for kindness and resilience. At harvest, they held feasts where everyone, no matter how much or little they had, shared their bounty. And every winter, when darkness pressed close, people gathered to sing, songs that held both sorrow and joy, melodies passed from heart to heart, binding the community together. Pandora herself became a cherished figure. Her wisdom was sought in times of doubt. Her laughter was a balm on heavy days. When a new sorrow struck, a storm that flattened crops, an illness that swept through the homes, she would walk among the people, reminding them gently, pain does not mean we are abandoned. Where there is love and care, hope takes root again. Sometimes travelers arrived from distant lands, carrying their own tales of loss and longing. They too found welcome in the village, drawn to its spirit of understanding. Around the shared table, everyone's burdens grew lighter, and stories wove together, reminders that sorrow and hope belong to all people, everywhere. Through the years, the box remained in Pandora's keeping. She no longer feared its presence. She honored it as a teacher, a quiet guardian of the truths her people now lived by. And in the glow of firelight, with her friends and family gathered near, Pandora would sometimes close her eyes and listen to the soft hum of hope, a music that had become as much a part of the world as sorrow itself. Seasons came and went, marked by the blooming and fading of wildflowers, the rise and fall of rivers, and the endless wheel of stars overhead. Pandora aged gently, her hair silvering like the moon's own light, her eyes deepening with the understanding born of many joys and many tears. But her place in the village remained unchanged, a source of comfort, a keeper of stories, a gentle reminder of all that hope could endure. Evenings found her beneath the ancient olive tree, children curled at her feet, adults sitting quietly nearby. They all listened as she told tales of old days, of the gods on Olympus, the forging of the mysterious box, and the moment when shadows and light spilled together into the world. She spoke softly of how the first sorrows had felt, sharp and frightening, and of how they were slowly transformed by kindness, patience, and the sharing of burdens. The box itself, still beautiful and mysterious, rested in Pandora's home on a simple shelf. From time to time, she would hold it in her lap, running her fingers along its carvings, recalling the moment that changed everything. Sometimes she wondered what would have happened if she had resisted the urge to open it, if the world might have remained untouched by sadness. But each time, she looked around at her people, stronger now, more compassionate. and she felt gratitude for all that had come since. Visitors continued to arrive, bringing news from distant places, tales of hardship and hope, of courage found in the face of loss. They marveled at the peace in Pandora's village, at the way people moved with care for one another and spoke with an honesty that was both tender and brave. Many chose to stay, weaving their own stories into the tapestry of the community. Pandora found joy in these connections. She watched the children of newcomers playing beside those who had always lived there, their laughter mingling in the warm dusk. She saw how even strangers in time learned the rituals of comfort and the power of shared hope. And on the quietest nights, as the world lay hushed beneath a sky filled with bright, unwavering stars, Pandora would sit with the box and remember all that had been lost and all that had been gained. Under the same sky that had once watched her open the lid, she whispered thanks for the lesson that sorrow and hope, bound together, could make even the smallest village shine like a constellation in the darkness. As years unfolded, Pandora's village became known as a place where sorrow and hope lived openly, side by side. Travelers and wanderers came from distant towns, drawn not just by the stories, but by the kindness they found on every path. It was said that no one who arrived with an aching heart left unchanged. These newcomers brought their own burdens and dreams. At first, some were hesitant, uncertain whether wounds from other places could truly heal. But soon they discovered what the villagers had long known, that pain shared is pain lessened, and that hope, like a candle's flame, could be passed from hand to hand without ever growing dimmer. Pandora greeted each new soul with quiet grace, listening to their stories without judgment. She taught the rituals of comfort, the ways her people gathered after loss, the small acts of generosity that built trust, the simple songs sung together when words failed. And as the circle of community grew, so did the understanding that all were bound together by the same fragile, resilient thread, the need to be seen, to be cared for, and to care in return. Children of all backgrounds played together beneath the olive trees. They learned, as naturally as breathing, to listen for sorrow in others and to answer it with laughter or a gentle touch. Their games wove together stories from many places, creating new traditions that belonged to everyone and no one, a living testament to the beauty born from sharing both pain and hope. The old ones often sat beside Pandora, recalling how different life had once been. They marveled at how far the village had come, from fearful silence and suspicion to open arms and honest hearts. The box changed us all, they would say, but hope made us whole. Pandora herself felt the widening of the circle most keenly. Sometimes she walked the paths at dusk, pausing to watch new friends gathered around a single lamp, telling stories that mingled sorrow and laughter. She knew that what had begun as one woman's mistake had become the foundation of a community, one that would endure as long as people chose to reach for each other in both shadow and light. And so, as the stars returned each night to their patient courses, the village glowed ever brighter, a small flame on the world's map, held aloft by the hands of all who called it home. The years moved softly through Pandora's village, carrying with them the quiet miracle of resilience. Gardens once barren bloomed with new abundance, each seed a testament to hope's steady work. Children who grew up hearing stories of the box learned that sorrow was not an ending, but an invitation to reach out, to create, to keep dreaming, even when the skies were dark. Pandora found comfort in the cycles of the earth. She watched as fields withstood drought and storm, only to green again in spring. She saw how wounds healed, how grief softened into memory, and how people returned, again and again, to one another's sides when trouble came. There was a wisdom in this, she realized, deeper than anything she had known before the box was opened. Hope had become woven into everything, in the hands that planted, in the voices that sang, in the patience with which people forgave mistakes. Even on the hardest days, someone would bring a flower to a neighbor's door, or offer bread to a stranger, or sit quietly beside a friend until the world felt gentle again. Pandora, too, continued to learn. She understood now that her mistake had given the village a chance to grow, not despite hardship, but because of it. The box had not stolen joy from the world, it had taught people to cherish it. The shadows that once seemed so frightening were softer now, marked by countless acts of kindness and the stubborn, shining light of hope. Visitors who came seeking comfort found not just healing, but a place to belong. Many chose to stay, building homes and families, planting their own seeds in the welcoming soil. Each story added its own colour to the tapestry of the village, reminding all that hope could survive any journey and take root wherever care and courage were found. And as the sun set each evening, painting the sky in gold and rose, Pandora would stand quietly at the edge of the fields, her heart full of both sorrow and gratitude. She knew that hope's true power was not in vanquishing pain, but in giving everyone the strength to begin again. As Pandora grew older, the lines on her face deepened, but so did the warmth in her eyes. She became known far beyond the village as a woman of quiet wisdom, a keeper of hope who understood the weight of sorrow and the beauty that could be born from it. Travelers arrived just to sit with her beneath the old olive tree, to listen to her stories or simply to rest in her gentle presence. The box remained on its shelf, no longer feared but respected, its secret both heavy and sacred. Pandora would sometimes hold it in her lap during the long evenings, tracing the familiar patterns with steady fingers. She did not regret her choice anymore. Instead, she saw the long line of goodness and growth that had unfurled from that single, trembling moment of curiosity. There were nights when the village was touched by fresh sorrow, a beloved friend lost, a crop ruined by storm, or the aches of growing old. But now, no one bore these burdens alone. The community moved as one, wrapping each hurting heart in a circle of care. In the warmth of a shared meal, the hush of a song sung together, or the comfort of silent company, Pandora saw hope shining everywhere. Children who had once listened in awe to stories of the box were now adults, passing on what they had learned to their own children. They spoke of mistakes, forgiveness, and the strange gift of being able to begin again. They taught that light is not the absence of darkness, but what remains and grows stronger each time it is shared. In her quiet moments, Pandora reflected on all that had changed. She knew now that hope was not a shield against pain, but a lantern to carry through it, a small flame that could survive any night. The village, in all its beauty and imperfection, stood as proof that sorrow could be transformed by care, and that every heart, no matter how wounded, could help light the way for others. And so, as the years gathered behind her and the horizon beckoned, Pandora rested in the knowledge that her story, like the hope she released, would never truly end. It would echo in every act of kindness, every word of comfort, every time someone reached for another in the dark. With each passing year, the village's story grew richer, layered with memories and meaning. On long evenings, people gathered beneath the vast sky, their voices mingling with the hum of crickets and the gentle rustle of olive leaves. Around the glow of small fires, elders and children alike took turns telling stories of the world before sorrow, of the day Pandora opened the box, and of all that had come after. These stories were not meant to frighten, but to heal. They spoke of pain, yes, but also of resilience, of how the village had learned to hold grief and hope together in the same hands. Laughter and tears flowed side by side, and every tale ended with the quiet assurance that hope was always near, waiting to be found anew. Pandora listened as her people wove these memories into songs and poems, their voices rising in gentle harmony. She was proud of what they had built, a home where no sorrow was carried alone, where joy was never taken for granted. The lessons of the box were alive in every corner, in the hands that tilled the soil, the arms that welcomed strangers, and the hearts that forgave and began again. Travelers who visited sometimes wept to hear such stories. They would sit in the soft darkness, the warmth of the fire on their faces, and let the words sink deep into places that ached. Some stayed for a while, finding healing in the steady rhythm of village life. Others left with a new light in their eyes, ready to carry hope home to distant towns. Pandora herself found comfort in the retelling. She knew that pain could never be erased, but that it could be named, shared, and transformed. Sometimes she would look up at the moon and remember her own trembling hands on the lid of the box, the breathless moment when everything changed. She saw now that even in our greatest mistakes, there can be seeds of grace, if only we choose to learn, to reach out, and to forgive. As the fires burned low and the stories faded into night, the village would grow quiet once more, but the promise remained. Hope would return with the dawn, lighting the way for all those willing to keep telling the story. Again and again, as long as hearts longed for healing. As time moved quietly onward, the meaning of Pandora's story deepened. No longer was it just a tale about a box or a single fateful choice. It became a lesson held in the very rhythm of life itself. The villagers came to understand that every heart would one day know sorrow, just as surely as every garden would taste both sunlight and storm. Children grew up beneath the branches of the old olive trees, learning that to be human was to be vulnerable, to hope, to grieve, and to begin again. The story of the box was part of every lullaby and blessing, a gentle reminder that mistakes do not define us. What matters is how we respond, how we comfort and mend, how we carry the small flame of hope into each new day. Pandora, now older and slower in her step, took joy in seeing her people thrive. She watched as neighbors supported one another through illness, as young lovers promised to be each other's shelter, as friends forgave and reunited after harsh words. The wisdom the box had brought was evident everywhere, in forgiveness freely offered, in laughter shared even on hard days, and in the willingness to carry both grief and gratitude as part of life's tapestry. The box itself had become a quiet symbol, a sign that all gifts come with responsibility, that even pain can be transformed. Pandora kept it near, a reminder that curiosity is not a flaw, but a force that shapes us. It is what drives us to seek truth, to risk, to learn and grow. The villagers no longer feared the box. Instead, they honored it as a source of growth, a quiet companion to their courage. On the rare nights when sorrow threatened to overwhelm, the people would gather together, holding hands, singing softly. In those moments, hope was not a distant dream but a living presence, woven into every voice, every heartbeat, every promise that tomorrow would come. As the moon arced across the night sky, Pandora often sat awake, listening to the peaceful breathing of her village. She knew the greatest gift she had brought was not the box itself, but the understanding that hope, once shared, could endure beyond any darkness. The years unfolded like a quiet song, carrying Pandora and her people into a future shaped by all they had learned. Time left its gentle marks. Children grew tall, elders passed on, and new voices joined the old in the endless cycle of life. Through it all, the lessons of the box, of sorrow and hope, of mistakes and forgiveness, remained at the heart of the village, guiding each soul with patient wisdom. Pandora, now silver-haired and serene, felt peace settle deep within her. She had lived through seasons of innocence and loss, regret and renewal, and she knew that the light of hope was not a thing to be kept hidden in a box. It was a flame meant to be shared, rekindled with every kind act, every word of comfort, every moment of honest courage. On her final evening, as the stars awakened and the village gathered to share songs and stories, Pandora looked around at the faces she loved. She saw sorrow and laughter mingling in their eyes, felt the strong current of connection flowing through the circle. The world was far from perfect, but it was beautifully whole, a place where light endured because people chose, again and again, to tend it. Before the fire's glow, Pandora placed the box gently in the hands of a young child, her eyes shining with gratitude and trust. "Guard this, not with fear, but with understanding," she whispered. "Let its story remind you that even when darkness falls, hope is never lost as long as we care for one another." As the night deepened, the village sang together, their voices rising like a promise to the sky. In each note was the truth of Pandora's journey. That sorrow shapes us, hope sustains us, and the greatest gift we can give is to help light the way for those who follow. And so, as the last embers faded and the dawn prepared to rise, Pandora's story joined the endless tapestry of human hearts, a lasting light, quietly burning, as long as there are those willing to hope, to forgive, and to begin again. Thank you for sharing this quiet night with us, listening to the gentle unfolding of Pandora's story. As the embers of our fire fade and the hush of sleep drifts in, may you carry with you the light of hope, the small enduring flame that lives in every heart, waiting to be kindled anew. If you enjoyed this story and find comfort in gentle myths, please like the video and subscribe to Sleepless Myth Stories for more peaceful tales to guide you to sleep. And if there's a myth or legend you'd love to hear next, let us know in the comments below. Your wishes help shape the stories we share by the fire. Rest well, dear listener. May hope and quiet courage guide you through the night, and may you wake refreshed with light enough to share.